So welcome everybody, all those of you joining from the train station. Yeah, you can connect to the microphone using the earpieces by plugging in and selecting the microphone icon, or you can listen in your own language. So we're currently in the western part of the city where Oxford train station is. The western part of the city was originally quite a deep floodplain for the city, but nowadays is more famed for being the home of the Saïd Business School, which is just here on your left. It's built in the year 2000. It is part of Oxford University, offering professional studies in business, usually for postgraduates, and has many graduates in the likes of Amazon, Microsoft, McKinsey, Google. It's very, very high achieving. And that's the building just here on your left. Named after Wasif Said, who donated a great deal of money to get it built on this site on Rewley Road. We turn left into Friedewide Square, named after Oxford's patron saint. Saint Friedewide was the daughter of a Wessex king in the Saxon times. Oxfordshire was divided up into a number of different areas, and the daughter of one of these rulers was famed for having healing hands, and so Saint Friedewide is what this whole square is named after. On the right of the Friedewide Square you can see a red brick building, and this would have been the old jam factory turning up in the 19th century, but it was a local business that created marmalade. It was known as Cooper's Marmalade, and it was one of the famous exports of Oxford. Oxford, of course, though, is best known for its worldwide global business known as the Oxford University. The university is composed of 26,500 students and made up of 39 different colleges. The university is spread all over the city. There are colleges which function as the houses, so the places where people effectively live and dine. There are also libraries in every college and a chapel in every college as well. And every chapel has a spire, and that is why Oxford has become known as the city of dreaming spires, because there are so many of them. If you do get the chance to view the city from above, which you can do if you go to the top of our shopping centre, you can see some of the city from the Westgate shopping centre, or you can visit Carfax Tower, which is available. You can buy tickets for this, and you can look down into some of the Oxford colleges from there. That's in the very city centre. You can also go to the top of St Mary's University Church, which allows you to look down on the city in all directions, from north, south, east and west. So that's quite a good view. The church asks for about £5 in donation, just to help the church look after its ancient building that was built in 1060. So it's very, very old.
Please hold the handrail when using the stairs, and don't use the stairs while the bus is moving.
We're just driving down Park End Street. Has become known in recent years for having a little flavour of Oxford's nightlife. There's a couple of pubs along here. And a couple of nightclubs. But true to form, because it's Oxford, it's never situated more than a stone's throw away from any college or student accommodation, which is also around this area. As we go past this pub, the Lighthouse, opposite the car park, is Nuffield College. Nuffield College was founded by Lord Nuffield, real name William Morris. William Morris goes on to establish a car factory in Oxford, which still exists today. It's known as Plant Oxford, and it still produces the Mini Cooper, which is exported all over the world. So Oxford is the home of the Mini Cooper. Our next stop is going to be the bus station. You can use the bus station to connect to other areas of Oxford and Oxfordshire and the Cotswolds. So if you are here for the weekend and you'd like a bit of information on how to do that, feel free to get off and ask the City Sightseeing team there, or any of the bus staff can help you make that connection. You can reach the Stratford-upon-Avon, for example. Parts of Cirencester are also quite well known, people like to travel to. This bus station also has regular connections to London. We have bus services that leave to West London, and the service terminates at Victoria. It's known as the Oxford Tube. Runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Very useful if you're looking to make connections to London. It's also got Wi-Fi, which is good. We also have a bus service that takes you to the airlines. It's about an hour to Heathrow, and so a couple more hours on top of that to reach Gatwick. But again, that service leaves roughly every hour. We'll head on to George Street. This is the home of Oxford's largest theatre, in the new theatre. There's also a few pubs and restaurants along here. One of the pubs is called the Four Candles. The reason it's called that is because next door to that complex there used to be a school, and that school was attended by Ronnie Barker, a British comedian who sadly is no longer with us, but he and his colleague had a sketch which became quite famous in British comedy circles, when somebody walks into a hardware store and asks for 4 candles, and he actually is looking for handles for forks. Anyway, not to put too fine a point on it, the pub is named after this association and this gentleman who is quite famous in British television. Ronnie Barker's family moved here when he was a young boy. He lived over in a region called Cowley, which is not too far away from the factory that I mentioned earlier, but he was educated on this street. The building that he was educated in, no longer the Oxford High School for Boys, it's now part of the history faculty for the University of Oxford, and invariably the university buys up, or has bought up, much of the city of Oxford. From a historical point of view, this has caused quite a lot of tension. It's not a problem anymore, but when the university first started to expand in the 13th and 14th century, the university would buy up property, they would buy up farmland, and they would then build walls, and they would also buy up quite a lot of the food that was being sold in the markets. And essentially what happened was the townspeople had a lot less to live on. Literally a lot less ground, a lot less land, and a lot less food. And by the time you get to the mid-13th century, the townspeople actually start to fight back. So the early days of Oxford and its university is actually mired in violence. There was a lot of riots in Oxford between what we would call the town today and the gown, the university. Probably the most famous of these riots was one that happens in early February, actually. February 18th. This is St. Scholastica's Day. And this is a riot that lasted for 5 days. And around 100 students ultimately ended up dead. And the king actually had to intervene with military force to restore order. And after St. Scholastica's Day, the town is penalised. They are forced to pay a tax to the university, and the university is given the ability to control the price of food and wine and bread and things like that. So from this point, the university really asserts dominance over the local area. On the right here, you have Oxford Castle and Prison, built around the year 1060. And you can do a tour of the castle complex, which is quite fun. There's costumed actors that will take you through the catacombs. Amusingly enough, Oxford Castle and Prison is part tourist complex, part hotel. And yes, some of the old prison cells have been turned into very luxurious hotel rooms today. If you're looking for the Westgate Shopping Centre, this is your stop. Take care, folks. Thank you.
Please wait for me. This is definitely the one we want. Thank you very much.
The Premier Inn's across the street. They're staying there. So underneath the Westgate Shopping Centre, I think it's just you and me, my friend. Underneath the Westgate Shopping Centre, there is the ruins of a 14th century monastery. The Augustinian monks who came here were sent by a dynasty in Pisa in Italy, and they established a community here, and they started teaching. This is some of the earliest. It would have been some of the earliest examples of teaching in Oxford, arriving just after some of the first colleges were founded. So they would have been looking to capitalise on the expertise that had just been established here. But it was all to do with learning about Christianity, the Church, Latin. You know, this was the format. And when they redid the shopping centre about sort of 12 years ago, actually a bit more than that, 15 years ago, they found more ruins, and they found loads of artefacts, which they then took to the museums. They had what would you call them? Archaeologists they had here for months, as well as, you know, building all of this. But the Westgate's really useful for, you know, visiting the city modern day. It's got lots of shops, lots of bars, restaurants. It's got a multiplex cinema on the top floor. It's got a gym, it's got escape rooms. There's loads of fun things to do, and sometimes the city uses it as a bit of a centerpiece for events that we're doing here. But if you go down this street on the left, that's where you'll get a lot of information about the monastery that used to be there. There's a sort of historical billboard there. You can read about it in more detail. Made quite famous with a famous scientist and teacher called Francis Bacon, who did a lot of work in this area. We're now on Speedwell Street. And this, we think, is where the city of Oxford sort of began. When the Anglo-Saxons first settle here, they build a bridge, like a river crossing. And that's here on the right. Obviously, the original bridge has long since been replaced, but this is Folly Bridge. You'll find the Thames on the right-hand side here. A very nice pub down there on the Thames called the Head of the River, which is what the winning boat at Oxford is called when they win the rowing races. They call the winning boat the Head of the River, so that's why it's got that name. This on the right here, this is Christ Church. This is a college built in 1525, founded partly by Cardinal Wolsey, partly by Henry VIII, who's quite a famous king of England, famous for the 6 wives. In school, we were always taught to understand Henry VIII's reign. You had to understand what happened to each of his wives. So he transforms the English church so that he can get a divorce from his wife, which he wants to do because he believes his wife is responsible for the fact that he can't produce a male heir. So he wants to change his wife so that he can have a son to take over the kingdom. That becomes his big worry. So he transforms the church in England, he removes Catholicism as best he can. And here what he does is he takes the cathedral at Oxford and he puts it inside a college. And that's what Christ Church is. And even today, this is where people are entitled to go and worship, but it's also a private university. So it's quite difficult. It's got to be both public and private at the same time. His 6 wives, we were always taught at school, divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. She actually out-survives him, he dies. So she was the lucky one in a sense, you could say. But this is the student entrance for Christ Church. If you're looking to walk around the grounds of Christ Church, you can, but you have to just go in through the garden entrance, which is nearer the zebra crossing that we passed. And that's a very nice walk. You can walk down to the Thames, and you can walk through some of the nicest parts of Oxford if you go around Christ Church and onto Merton Street. You can join us on one of our walking tours if you want. We have a 90-minute walking tour which leads from the top of this street, and we also have a 45-minute walking tour which leads from the High Street, which I'll point out to you later if you like. The colleges themselves don't have any one particular discipline, so they're all houses rather than specialised. The colleges share all the different disciplines and faculty buildings that the university has built over the centuries. Well, let me know if I can help in any way. Okay? Hello folks.
Hi.
Welcome. So my name is Ben. I'm a tour guide on this service, so if you'd like any information, happy to help.
Great, thank you.
It's alright? I'll give you a bit of commentary as we go. Have you visited Christ Church today, or are you just joining us?
No, I was just out of the hotel.
Ah, great, okay. So Christ Church is this building here on your right, built in 1525, has about 500 students inside, and was built by Henry VIII. He actually he takes the Cathedral of Oxford and moves it inside the college, because he wants to remove the power of the church, which he does. And even today, this is a site that's open to the public, and of course has to be private because it's part of Oxford University and its tuition and everything else. So it's a very complicated administrative procedure for them to manage. But a very famous college as well, because it's educated, I think, 13 prime ministers and all sorts of other sort of famous people as well. It's where Lewis Carroll, who was a maths teacher here, put together Alice in Wonderland. Alice was actually a real person.
Right.
Alice Liddell was the daughter of the dean, who's like the administrative head of the college. And one day they were sort of family friends, Carol and Henry Liddell, and they all went on a boat ride with his family one day. And Alice, who's quite young, about 6, was sort of apparently tugging at his coat and saying, "Tell me a story, tell me a story, well, tell me a story, tell me a story." So he makes up this story where Alice is the centre character. Everybody loves it. And then they say, "Can you write it down and can you draw the pictures?" And he does, and this is what becomes Alice in Wonderland, the book. Yeah. But he was quite recluse, so he gave himself a pen name, Lewis Carroll, whereas his real name was Charles Dodgson. And he lived in one of these rooms near the turret on the end here. His book was said to have been so celebrated that even Queen Victoria wrote to the college and said, "We loved the book. Thank you so much, Mr. Dodgson. My grandchildren, they love it. We would love to read whatever your next instalment is. Please have that as a sort of royal seal of approval." he did write Alice Through the Looking Glass, but he also, as part of that decree, is alleged, anyway, to have sent her one of his mathematics textbooks because he was a maths professor and it was a publication he did. So he. At the end of this street, I don't know where your hotel is, but at the end of this street is the Thames. And on Folly Bridge, there's two nice places you could visit if you were looking for somewhere to go. There's the Folly Bridge restaurant, which is on the other side from where we are now, which is very nice. And there's also, if you wanted something a bit more informal, the Head of the River pub, which is nice to Fuller's pub, rather than like an independent, but it's still, I think, pretty good, pretty reasonable. But you know, in the winter you can kind of sit inside, you're right by the Thames, and they light it very nicely so it's warm and cosy. In the summer it's absolutely packed. Hello sir, welcome. Right. I have a little microphone here, so when we get going, I'll do that.
Are the colleges and universities open at the moment, or is it?
So the colleges are basically a law unto their own, right? Christchurch is the only one that runs a sort of official tourism business that you can book and do an audio tour of and go around the college. Other colleges, they can be open, but they can shut whenever they like, so I can't really guarantee it. But it's always worth standing outside the college. You can just ask. Sometimes they put a billboard out the front and it'll say the pricing for entry. If you're looking for colleges that I'd recommend, Christchurch has got the grandest dining hall. New College is also very nice, though. I would recommend that. Or you could visit Balliol and Trinity, which are very close to the heart of the old university. So if you're in that area, you might want to do that. Okay, folks, welcome to those of you who've joined us at Christchurch. My name is Ben. I'm the tour guide on the top deck. If you need any help, just come and ask me. I'm going to give you a bit of commentary as we move through the city. So right now we are on St Aldate's. We're going to turn right onto the high street, but this area is known as Carfax. This is the heart of the city of Oxford. This is where the four main streets that the Anglo-Saxons built in the year 900 all meet. The road from the south to the north is the one we're on at the moment, and we're going to turn from the road that would have stretched from west to east. You might like to visit Carfax Tower here on the left, which is managed by City Sightseeing, and you can get a ticket to look down on the city and get a nice view of this medieval town. We're now on the High Street, which is home to Oxford's Covered Market. You cannot leave Oxford without having been here, in my opinion. It's built in 1774, and inside you will find loads of different types of cuisine from all over the world. So you'll find, for example, plenty of Japanese sushi, you'll find Thai food, you'll also find plenty of sweet things in there too. Ice cream, cookies, chocolate. It's a great treasure trove. So if you're looking for something to do for lunch, you can go there, and everyone in your party's got a choice of what they could have. Also on the high street, we have Brasenose College, just appearing here on our left, which is next to St Mary's, the University Church, where quite a lot of the Oxford University teaching started. St Mary's is also one of the oldest buildings in Oxford. The central spire was built around the year 1060, so that's before the first kings of England get here even. If you wanted a very nice stroll through Oxford, I would recommend going down Magpie Lane and onto Merton Street. There you'll find the original, or some of it is the original cobbles, and you'll be up against the oldest colleges in Oxford. But on this street you have University College on the right, probably the second oldest college in Oxford, although some say they have the older buildings. You also have Queen's College here on the left. Queen's College is quite famous because it's got a first folio of Shakespeare in its library. It's also counting Rowan Atkinson among its alumni, also known as Mr. Bean, and the man who is said to have effectively invented the World Wide Web, the coding, the HTML for that, a man called Tim Berners-Lee. You can also go down Queen's Lane, and that will lead you to the heart of the old university, where you will find the Bridge of Sighs, the Radcliffe Camera, and the Duke Humphrey Library, Oxford's oldest library. Here though, on our right, is the most terrifying place in the whole of the city. That's the examination schools. So this is where many of the students will sit written exams for things like history, law, languages. Science exams are handled a bit differently, as you might imagine. We're now on the eastern gate of the city. So this is exiting the old city of Oxford, and just outside the old city of Oxford is the very grand 15th century college, Magdalen College. Counts among its alumni Oscar Wilde, and C.S. Lewis was a teacher here, so the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, if you've heard of either of those folk. But there's a very long list in very many different disciplines. Magdalen College is also home to quite a large deer park, so it actually counts within its amenities 70 deer, which the college has looked after since the 15th century. We're now going over Magdalen Bridge, and this is another river that flows through Oxford. This is the Cherwell. Looking a bit swollen at the moment, I have to say. We've had quite a bit of rain recently. Oxford is built on a floodplain. All this construction is going to be new accommodation for Magdalen College. The college is forever expanding, it's true to say, but they own property all over the UK and in Europe, and in fact all over the world. Sometimes in places like South America, Oxford University has built observatories, because I gather these are the best places to observe the stars from. What we're going to do is go around this roundabout in an area known as the Plain, but if you were to carry on, you would reach further eastern corners of Oxford, and this is where you will find Plant Oxford, which was established by William Morris in the 1920s, but Plant Oxford today makes and manufactures the Mini Cooper. So it's now the BMW Mini Cooper, but it's always been made from Oxford in some guise, which is quite nice. We've still got that legacy too. On your left you'll see an independent school which is called Magdalen College School, and you'll also see on the other side of the Cherwell some punts which you can do in Oxford as an activity, and beyond that this is the Botanical Gardens, owned by Oxford University. The Botanical Gardens is part of a group managed by an administration collectively known as Gardens, Libraries and Museums, which the university all own. But personally I quite like the acronym GLAM, which makes the university sound a lot more theatrical than it really is. You know, it's centuries old and has many traditions. In a moment we're going to turn right onto Long Wall Street, so named because of the long wall that Magdalen College erected all along the edge of the city. Part of it would have been the old city wall of Oxford, but that now no longer stands. The university will take students from the UK. We'll have around 2/3 of the intake will all be from the UK, and around 1/3 will be international students. The largest intake of these tends to come from the United States and China, as you may expect. Around 200 each from those nations. Sorry, no, around 1,000 each, sorry, from those nations. And you'll get around 600 or so that will come from places like Germany and Italy, Holland, France. If you're applying to Oxford University, you usually do this through a digital system nowadays called UCAS, where you present a personal statement, you get a reference from the people who've been teaching you, and you'll be asked to write what you can do for Oxford and also what Oxford can do for you. Just on your left here, this is the original William Morris garage. So before he goes on to build the factory, he had this garage here where he fixed and sold both bicycles initially and then vehicles. So we're now entering St. Cross Road, named after St. Cross Church, which is buildings which are all part of the largest law library in the world. There's also part of the English faculty that's based here. Some of these buildings were designed by quite a famous Norwegian architect called Arne Jacobsen. There's also student accommodation here, which you can see, partly for New College, which we can see on the right. There's also some sports grounds here for another independent school, which is New College School. But otherwise, everything on the left now as we drive by is all to do with the Oxford University Science District. This area is often renovated and remodelled, you could say. There's a lot of construction that takes place in this part of the city as Oxford University consistently upgrades its buildings and its technology in order to be at the cutting edge of teaching for many, many different scientific disciplines. There's effectively a science village that we're going to drive around in just a second. Many of the buildings have blue plaques on them even today because of the Nobel Prize winning scientists that have worked here, made important discoveries here. Not all of them from the UK, and you'll see lots of different nationalities represented on the honours. One of the most famous was a gentleman called Howard Florey. He was actually an Australian who came here as a Rhodes Scholar. Now, Rhodes Scholars are still present today. They are scholars usually taken from outside of the UK. The Rhodes Scholarship is there to promote, I think it's usually individuals from the Commonwealth countries, but I gather this is being opened out to other nations too. And on this street, Rhodes Scholars have use of not just their own college, but their own sort of faculty building, which has its own dining hall, its own lecture halls, its own study facilities, its own libraries. That is the building just coming up here on the left with the big green dome. It was all set up by a man called Cecil Rhodes, who, if we look at his Victorian past, we might not look so charmingly on today. Much talked about controversial figure Cecil Rhodes, but the Rhodes Scholarship is something that Oxford University does make the best of. Other famous Rhodes Scholars could include Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar from the United States, of course goes on to become President of the United States, although he doesn't complete his degree at University College, Oxford. I believe his career was already well underway, and let's just say I think he also had other interests. I think it kept him from completing. We're going to go down Parks Road though, on the left. I'm going to go past a few other colleges, and we're really going now into the heart of the university. Parks Road joins up with Broad Street. And I'll talk probably extensively about Broad Street when we get there, because there's lots of things you might like to hop on and hop off to visit. Just a reminder, you can hop on and hop off over the course of the day using this service. Just check the terms and conditions of your ticket, because it kind of depends when you bought your ticket and what its validity is. If you look to the right, you've got Trinity College there on the right, the big blue gates, founded in 1555. And then you've got the 15th century Wadham College here on the left. Now, Wadham College was the first college to be established by a woman, in Dorothy Wadham, although women themselves didn't actually study at Oxford until the 20th century, which is quite alarming given that Wadham turns up in 15. Here on your left you have the Clarendon building, which was built in 1711. It's the first home of the Oxford University Press. And then on your left again, this is the Sheldonian Theatre. This is where the students graduate from. This was built in 1669, and the architect was Christopher Wren for this building. You also have one of the older colleges in Oxford. This is Exeter College here on the left. That was built in 1415. Famous for having J.R.R. Tolkien amongst its alumni, but also as a more recent writer, Philip Pullman. J.K. Rowling is an honorary member of Exeter. didn't study here, but she was given an award by the university. So we're going to park up here just on the left-hand side now that we've done a U-turn here. You may like to hop on and hop off to visit one of these colleges. My recommendations would be Trinity Balliol as well. It's on this street. And you may like to visit Blackwell's, which is the bookshop for Oxford. Blackwell's is actually in the Guinness Book of Records because it is the largest basement that sells the most number of books of anywhere in the world. Or at least it was until probably the next Guinness Book of Records comes out. But Blackwell's has many signed copies of books as well from famous authors. Often is the home of book signings and has an enormous collection. There is another Blackwell's store on the other side of the street, just next to Exeter, and this is one that specialises in comic books, sci-fi, manga, and it's a little bit different, but nonetheless interesting. I think they've both got lots to offer. You can also visit the Museum of the History of Science, which is on the right-hand side. This will open from midday. This has numerous mathematical instruments from history, former medical instruments as well. But perhaps its most famous artifact is Einstein's blackboard, which is in the basement, because Einstein was a teacher at Oxford for a short time in the 1930s. He was here for a couple of years, delivered quite a famous lecture at Christ Church from which this blackboard is taken. So you've got Einstein's handwriting preserved in that museum as well. My recommendation for you, if you would like to get inside any of the Oxford University buildings, is to visit the Western Library, which is open to the public. It's got a very warm cafe in there too, and 2 free exhibitions. One is called Treasured, which is currently showing you some of the rarest books that Oxford University keeps. They're all just there on display and presented neatly so you can kind of read up on what each one is. You don't need any prior knowledge or anything, and I think there's some audio-visual to help you with that. There's another exhibition there on the work of John le Carrier. If you've been watching The Night Manager recently on the BBC, if you're here from the UK, that might be of interest. But he's an author that was famous for spy thrillers, so worth checking out if that sounds interesting for you. All completely free, and you can ask at the information desk on how to get inside the Sheldonian Theatre, Oxford University Libraries, or perhaps you'd like to go on a walking tour. This bus company also offers a walking tour which lasts 45 minutes or 90 minutes. One leaving from the High Street, one leaving from Carfax Tower. So we'll make our way off Broad Street, heading back down Parks Road, and we're going to head north before we then loop back round and come into the city centre. In the city of Oxford, you have a population of around 90,000 people. There's about 26,500 students at Oxford. But we also have another university in the eastern part of the city called Oxford Brookes University, which has a further 16,500 students. So it doesn't take long to work out that it's got a big student population. And that's not even including the amount of schools that we have in Oxford, the amount of language schools as well. It's a very popular educational city, as I'm sure you would expect. But it does mean, just because of the way education seems to function as a business, it does mean that on average, Oxford is one of the youngest places you can visit, as in the average age of the people here brings the average down, relatively speaking. So you will see a lot of young people. But don't let that put you off, it's a nice place. On the right hand side we have another of Oxford's museums. This is the Natural History Museum, also home to the Pitt Rivers Museum. Natural history dealing with all things in the natural world, including lots of dinosaur bones. Pitt Rivers dealing with, well, everything that humankind has ever produced. The first weapons, the first boats, and all kinds of other things. Both really interesting museums if you do have the time. The nice thing about museums here in Oxford and in most parts of the UK, they're all free. Some of the exhibitions might cost, but you can still have a great time without needing to. pay anything up front. They're always very appreciative though of donations to keep them running. This road is Parks Road, which is also home to Keble College, which is here on your left. This is a college that was built in the latter part of the 1800s, and it was a magnificent college built out of red brick, which unfortunately upset a lot of the other dons at some of the older colleges because they thought building a college out of red brick was an abomination. Balliol College even established a club called the No Keble Club, and if you were a member of this club, you were given license to steal a brick during the construction of Keble, and if you brought it back to the college bar, they would give you a pint of beer. It got so out of hand, the local police force had to get involved when some of the students were chiselling away bricks at Keble. Fortunately, the college does get built. One of the reasons they used red brick at the time was because the government had removed a tax on using brick as a building material, so the materials were cheaper, and the people who were funding the college at the time wanted the college to be made out of materials that were economical, because they wanted the college to be for people who couldn't afford necessarily to go to Oxford at a time when the cost was very prohibitive. Nowadays, if you're studying in the UK, you tend to take a loan from the government. If you so wish, you don't have to, you can continue to fund through independent wealth. Most students though, they take a loan which will pay for their tuition. It's around £9,500 a year, and you'll take another loan for your what they call maintenance, which is your living costs. The nice thing about studying at Oxford though is it no longer is just a playground for children of the uber wealthy. It is a place that can subsidise your living costs, because the colleges, many of them, have independent businesses. They used to own quite a lot of land, so the colleges, to put it bluntly, aren't always that short of a few quid, and so the students who go here, when they eat out of the dining hall, they're not paying as much as they would pay in almost any other establishment. In this part of North Oxford, what you'll see is a number of buildings that were built during the Victorian period, many of which were built to give accommodation to academic staff. This is St Hugh's College that was built in the 1920s, but it's surrounded by lots of very grand properties. In the Victorian period, we were just coming out of an era where religion was essentially seen as the most important thing. Oxford University starts by being an establishment that will only hire ordained priests as teachers. But by the time you get to, if you like, the fin de siècle, the turn of the century, the importance on medicine and engineering and physics and science, if you like, were far more important. And Oxford University started recruiting people who didn't want to be ordained priests. They were married. They didn't want to live inside the colleges, and so if they were going to attract the best minds and the best teachers, they were going to need to do something drastic to encourage them to stay in Oxford. And so they gave them properties, and they gave them houses, and it meant they could move their families here. That's not always the case today. Property in Oxford's very expensive, but if academic staff are given somewhere to live, it tends to be in North Oxford. It's quite a nice area to live in, and as we descend down this street, we'll go back towards the city of Oxford, and we'll go past some of the nice bars and restaurants that North Oxford has to offer. I'm talking to you as somebody who grew up here, so I can say it's a nice place to live, because I sort of know people who've lived here or have visited here quite a bit when I've had the fortune to do so. But we're going to go past one of the largest colleges in Oxford, St Anne's College. It's not largest in terms of the amount of land that it's got, but it is home to one of the largest numbers of students. It's got about 900 students at St Anne's College, which we're just approaching. The largest college is Kellogg College, which has got about 1,300 students. And yes, that was established by the same family as the breakfast cereal company. Yeah. So this is the Woodstock Road, which will lead us back into the heart of the city. In a moment, we're going to come up against the Radcliffe Quarter. Now, the Radcliffe Quarter is named after John Radcliffe, who was a medical doctor. He died in 1714, but he left a fortune to Oxford University. And in the 1700s, Oxford really kind of needed that money to expand. There was a lot of demand for the university to increase its places and increase its teaching facilities. So they were very grateful when Radcliffe gave them a small fortune, and they actually give him a building called the Radcliffe Observatory, which I'll point out to you in just a second, we'll be able to see. They also named the Radcliffe Infirmary, which was a teaching hospital after him. The Radcliffe Camera, which you can visit on one of our walking tours. It's not possible to see on the bus route, but you can see it when walking around the city if you go to Radcliffe Square. And the John Radcliffe Hospital, where I was born, is also set up by a trust in his name. So this is St Anne's College on the left, you can see more clearly, and immediately then look to the right, and you've got the Radcliffe Observatory, which was built to gaze at the stars. Now no longer, it's more of a lecture hall today, and well, administrative building. And next to it is the Radcliffe Infirmary. Just beyond the Radcliffe Infirmary, you can't quite see it, but it's the largest project that Oxford University have ever undertaken. It's going to be a new centre for all the humanities subjects. And it's going to be called the Schwartzman Centre, because it's been paid for by Stephen Schwartzman, who's a big, I believe, donor to the university. I think he's also quite high up within American business. This area, known as St Giles, is where two roads kind of intertwine. It's home to a few different colleges, which I'll talk about in a moment, but it's perhaps most famous for being the home of the Lamb and Flag, which is a pub you may like to visit because it's where J.R.R. Tolkien, who I mentioned earlier, author of Lord of the Rings, and C.S. Lewis used to meet. They were friends, and they met as part of an academic group in that pub on the left there called the Inklings. There's a college on the right called Regent's College. St Cross College as well is over there, and on the left here you've got St John's College, which is arguably one of the wealthiest colleges in Oxford. Established in 1555, it's got about 500 students inside who live there, but it owns a lot of land in Oxford and North Oxford. My mum lives 12 miles away from Oxford and has got a nice house surrounded by forest. It's all owned by St John's. It used to be true to say that you could walk on land owned by St John's College, Oxford, to St John's College, Cambridge, although that's no longer the case, but it does give you an idea as to how much the church and the land that they own had to do with the prosperity of many Oxford colleges. We've parked just outside the Martyrs Memorial, which is the tall spire you can see. The Martyrs Memorial is a memorial dedicated to 3 men who were put to death in Oxford by Mary the First, Bloody Mary as she became known. When she ascended to the throne, she was very unhappy at what her father, Henry VIII, had done in changing the religious itinerary of the country. He had effectively diminished Catholicism and started Anglicanism, and Mary saw these 3 men as partly responsible for that. They were the Archbishop of Canterbury, Bishop of London, and the Bishop of Winchester. She has them burned at the stake for doing this heretical thing. But around 500 years later, well, 400 years later, we build a memorial to say sorry. If you wanted to alight here, you could also get to the Ashmolean Museum, which is across the street. That's the big white Greco-Roman building. That is originally the first museum ever built in the UK. But its new home is there, and it has over 3,000 years of history inside it. It's a really special museum if you wanted to take a look inside, started by a man called Elias Ashmole, hence the name. If you look to your left, you'll see the other end of Broad Street, and by now you might have gathered that Oxford is not an enormous city. If you're looking to walk around the heart of it, so between the Ashmolean and the heart of the original university where the Sheldonian is and Broad Street, you don't have to walk too far. We are going to continue down George Street, straight ahead. and we're going to be making our way to the Oxford train station. But as we go by, on your left, we'll go past Cornmarket Street, which is a very typical UK high street, really. One of the busiest streets in Oxford. And again, it's home to lots of pubs, places that you can go to eat, cafes. George Street is home to Oxford's largest theatre, which is currently running an Inspector Morse show. Inspector Morse was a television crime drama that was all set in Oxford. The detective Inspector Morse in every episode would uncover the perpetrator of some awful murder that took place in the city. Fortunately, it's not like that in real life. This building on your left here is quite a grand building, but now part of the history faculty. There's a pub here called the Four Candles, because what is now the history faculty used to be a boys' school, and Ronnie Barker used to attend that school. Ronnie Barker goes on to become quite a famous British comedian. He once opened a television sketch which was all about a gentleman going into a hardware store and asking for 4 candles. What he really meant was handles for forks. Yeah, maybe he had to be there. But he's quite a famous name in British TV and British comedy. So the pub is an honour to the fact that he was educated on that street. We're now in the western part of the city. We're just driving over the Oxford Canal, and this is an area known as Park End Street. Quite synonymous with a bit of Oxford nightlife. So this is where a lot of local people tend to hang out in the evenings. It's going to be quite busy on a Saturday. Although maybe January's a good time for it, what with it being dry January and all, and having just had Christmas, who knows how busy it'll be. But this area, known as Friedeswide Square, St Friedeswide was the patron saint of Oxford, is home to the Saïd Business School, which is part of Oxford University, a very exclusive school that does MA for business, so Masters of Business. Meaning you go here after you've taken a degree either at Oxford or elsewhere, and if it's business that you're looking to increase your expertise on, then the Saïd Business School is looking to rival some of the schools that you'll find at Harvard and Yale business schools as well. It's Oxford's answer to that.